This episode of The Edge is brought to you by Audible.com, offering more than 180,000 titles for smartphone, tablet, and desktop. To get a free audiobook of your choice and help Trek.fm at the same time, visit audibletrial.com/trekfm. And also by Enterprise in Space, an international program of the nonprofit National Space Society. Find out how you can help science and education and become a virtual crew member aboard the NSS Enterprise Orbiter by visiting enterpriseinspace.org. And if you want to join the conversation and share your thoughts on this episode, join the Babel Conference, our listeners group on Facebook. Just type BABEL into the Facebook search field. We look forward to seeing you there.
Hi, I'm Rekha Sharma, and I played Landry on Star Trek Discovery. You are listening to The Edge on Trek FM.
What have you done out there on the edge of Federation space?
Welcome, listeners, to The Edge, Trek FM's dedicated podcast to Star Trek Discovery. I'm your host, Patrick Devlin, and with me, as always, is Amy Nelson. Amy, how are you today?
Hello and welcome. Sounds like you're a little under the weather there, Patrick.
Yeah, I'm going to have to apologize to the listeners because I'm going to sound all stuffy all podcast, but I've been sick, but I wasn't going to miss talking about the first episode of Season 2, so.
I know! It's finally here! I'm so excited.
Yeah, I've been getting more and more excited as we got closer, plus the short treks really got me into wanting to see more. So, like I said, I've been bedridden for like 2 days, but there was no way they were keeping me from the computer for this one, so.
Nice.
Obviously, today we're going to talk about the episode Brother. What were your initial thoughts on the first episode of Season 2?
Oh my gosh, I loved it. Like I guess I won't say every part because we'll get into it a little bit later, but really, the cinematography, like I felt like I was watching a movie. It was so well done, and the action, and I felt that the editing was really good. The pacing was sometimes a little too fast, so I'm glad I had some time to, watch it again and catch more of what was going on in the story and like with the action and what the math was, or what they were trying to do. So I really enjoyed it. I loved getting to see our bridge crew and that roll call, and it's like, oh, that's who these people are, because it was so in season 1 just in passing, and Lorca just didn't even care who he was working with. He only cared about Burnham. And so to see Pike come in and really introduce us formally to this bridge crew was amazing. And then getting to see all of the characters that we know and love. So I really enjoyed it. It was nice, humorous, Star Trek-y, everything. It was great.
Yeah, I agree. I loved this episode. I absolutely loved it. It had a great Star Trek message while pushing that boundary of action they want to do in this Discovery series without making the focus the action. The action scenes were good, but they weren't the only thing going on. And we see the only thing I didn't like about the character development in this episode was they're definitely making Tilly more comedy still, and that's not my thing. But I understand why they're doing it, because so many people do love that side of Tilly. So I just have to get over it and move on, because it's not going to change, because that's what people like about her. Other than that, I loved all the character development, and I found it very interesting that we had, in the very beginning, we had the young Spock drawing, and then he brought up that dragon, and then at the end, that obviously comes to play. We'll get into it a little bit more when we get into the episode, but, so we had that, that Chekhov's gun kind of thing going on in this episode again, which is cool, because we talk about it in so many episodes in Star Trek, and we had it here again in a little bit different way. I liked it.
Yeah, so going on a couple things you said, like the action scenes, I was very happy to see them, because it seemed like the only action scenes we saw in season 1 was because of the war. And so it had this very, dark and heavy consequences of what was happening. And so now it was just fun and exploration of, oh, well, here's this asteroid and there's a ship down there. And so that that action scene and the sequence of getting down and landing on the asteroid was just so amazing. And it wasn't war related. I loved it that it was Discovery,
Right. Yeah, exactly. It's back to the Star Trek that we know, the exploration Star Trek. And honestly, I know a character dies in that scene, and I'm so glad because he sucked.
Yeah, he was annoying.
Yes, very much.
He just seemed to know it all, and even told Pike, I know what I'm doing. Smash.
Yeah. In the middle of explaining what he said to his roommate in college or whatever, he dies.
Yeah.
So good for him. Yeah. You don't want to listen to other people. Good for you. That's what happens.
But did you think, because, Pike brought on his 2 officers, the blue and the red shirt, and then it's like, hey, you're coming. And I was like, oh no, the red shirt. And I thought for sure, but then it was Connolly.
It was the blue shirt, yeah. We broke the stereotype.
Yes, yay!
Oh, that poor girl's gonna die. But I did see the red shirt and thought that at first, but then and then when he went, I was like, oh, good.
Yeah.
He was just over the top.
Yeah. And I think he was written to be that way, but it was interesting. So another point that I wanted to talk about was Tilly, and I'm sort of glad it seems like you have the same opinion. I felt very disappointed in some parts the way that Tilly was used to be the comedic relief. And, we talked about it with season 1, especially that last episode. And she just has so much more to offer. And she did have good scenes, like with Stamets and with Burnham, and her science and her math. That's the power of math, people. I'm so glad we got to see that finally. But the comedy of it it didn't sit right with me.
Well, to me, that's the problem. That's the crux of the problem. The problem is she is such a good character if you get rid of that. If you knock out I'm not saying get rid of all the comedy, but like when she comes running onto the bridge and she's yelling as all the sound goes away, like that's something that every one of us has done in a bar at one point when the music is really loud and we're trying to talk to a friend and then all of a sudden we're the only one screaming in the bar.
Yeah.
So I get it. She's trying to make her seem more like us, but it just, I don't know. To me, it takes away from the character because the character is so smart. So to have them be so dopey at times, I don't know. It feels off for me. It doesn't work for me. So Tilly's never going to be my least favorite character on this show, but because of that, she'll never be my favorite either. And I don't like that because I want the other part of her is one of my favorite characters. And most people defend it though. So most people like it. So
they did.
It's not going to change. I'm in the minority. You're in the minority feeling this way. And I understand that. It's just not my cup of tea.
Yeah.
I'm just not big on it. Like the whole thing with the pinky and I get it. It's because she talks too much and they're trying to play on that, but they're playing a little too heavy on it, in my opinion.
I did like that. Oh, I thought I broke a captain. And it was just short, but it, like when she was in that screaming on the bridge, used Morse code. And then I felt that scene went on way too long. She could have just said, oh, well, the noise or, good job, Con, and then cut. But it felt like it went on forever with her apologizing and explaining why she was screaming. We all knew why she was screaming. I don't know.
Yeah, but even like if you watch the scene before she breaks a captain, that particular line wasn't bad. But before that, when she's going on, that's not a very authoritative finger. Who cares?
Yeah.
That's not even a funny joke. Like, I mean, they show Saru like put his eyes down, and they show the other guy laugh. Like,
yeah.
Oh.
But I watched it again because it did. When she was talking about the pinky, but before when he puts his hand down, it's completely within the circle. I know. And I saw that both times, and I'm like, what are you talking about his pinky? So, I mean, that was clearly added in because when he puts his handprint down, it's completely within the circle.
Yeah.
So.
Someone screwed up and editing didn't catch it at all. Because it's supposed to be outside, but it's not.
Yeah.
Because she talks about his nail beds. Whatever.
Yeah.
The whole thing was just a little over the top for me, but people like it. So, like I said, I just have to get used to it. I got to get it. It is what it is.
And she is showing her compassion and, and her obviously intelligence And so we'll have to mix with it.
And again, I don't want to blame the actress here.
No,
because
Mary Wiseman is amazing.
Right. These scenes are being acted to a T. They're perfect. I just don't like that trait in this character. So,
right. Yeah.
It's not that I don't like the way it's being handled. I just don't like the way it's being written. I think she's acting it to the best of her ability, which is phenomenal.
Yeah.
So I just want to make that delineation before I start getting killed for hating Mary Wiseman, because I don't.
No.
There's a few other scenes around this time that I really liked. So Connolly goes and explains all this about these signals. We don't think it's a planet. We don't think it's a moon, blah, blah, blah. And the navigational goes haywire, and Burnham goes kind of like a compass at the North Pole, and he goes, well, I didn't think a metaphor worked, and she's like, that's more of a simile. Pike's answer was a little, well, I owe you a simile. Like, oh, come on, dude. But when he talks to Connolly, he's like, do you see how many syllables died? Like, that was great.
That was so funny. Oh my gosh, that was amazing.
I'm being a bit contradictory here because I like Pike for the reasons I don't like Tilly,
right.
But I don't know. I did like that line. He has a few like snappy comebacks that I like towards Connolly, and that was probably the best one.
Yeah. Well, and I love it when, they get out of warp and they're like, where's my red things?
Yeah, I'm expecting a red thing.
Where's my red things?
That was good too.
Oh, that's so relatable. And he's not this like, I don't know. Like normally you would expect a captain to, where are my red anomalies? And just spout off and just, where's my red things?
I was expecting a red thing. Nope, it's not here, bro. Yeah. Okay, so so here's the one thing about the episode that it drove me crazy, and I know it shouldn't, but I do construction, so it drove me crazy. When they show you the outside of the turbo lift, why does it look like it's flying around a city from some bad movie that was made in the 80s about the future?
Okay, so be a little more specific because I'm not quite sure what you're
all right, so they get in the turbo lift right after that exchange. And then that other species in there, and he sneezes on Connolly. Yeah, so he sneezes on Connolly, which was hilarious. But they show you the outside of the turbo lift going by. And it looks like a city from a bad 80s movie. In the 80s, they made all these movies like Demolition Man and stuff.
Yeah.
So it's only like 2 seconds long, this stupid scene. And it really has no bearing on the episode whatsoever. It doesn't change my opinion of the episode. But it's a massive waste of space inside a spaceship that would be at a premium.
So I sort of thought something similar, like when they got into those little bee things, shuttlecraft, but maneuverable
and they all had to fly
things.
out for a mile?
Yeah, like what? It felt like they were on a roller coaster and like going through this tube type of thing. And I'm like, why aren't they just right there exiting like the shuttlecraft, or the shuttle bay? Like it seemed like they were going through the entire ship to exit. And it has nothing to do with the episode, but I thought that same thing.
Yeah, so I saw that one. I was like, I can't complain about both. So I picked the turbo lift.
Okay.
But since we're going to bring it up, I'll complain about both. They go to the shuttle bay, they get lowered, and then they fly through the saucer. I don't understand. Like they come out the front. I don't understand. It was cool. Both scenes themselves were done really well and looked really cool. They just don't have any place on the show.
Yeah.
Like they don't make any sense. So when this thing, you see the track like whirls like a roller coaster. And then, okay, so the whole point, the lights on the inside of the turbo lift are supposed to be you going past floors.
Right.
But you're not, because you're suspended in nothingness, by the way. If you notice that scene, like you're not up against the walls. It's a wide open space. So turbo lifts can only go from point A to point B now?
Yes. Okay.
Elevators stop on every floor, and they're surrounded by floors.
Yeah.
It's also straight up and down is also the most efficient way to build something. Mm-hmm. You wouldn't build a ship where you just wouldn't do it. It just doesn't make any sense that you would have to go around these looping turns and there was a ship flying by fixing things. It doesn't even make sense. It drove me crazy. And then with your point, like it was really cool when the first pod came out and then the second and the third, and then you saw all the tubes that meet and they're going.
Yeah.
But if they would have all come together and then shot out like quickly, that would have made sense.
Yeah.
But instead, They drive for like a mile and a half down this corridor, and then they're outside.
Yeah.
Okay. Whatever. Again, it doesn't actually affect the rating of the episode at all.
Yeah.
It's just
Interesting.
Weird.
Funny things that you pick up.
Yeah. And people are going to say, people are going to be screaming like, it didn't really matter. And they're right. It didn't really matter. But it's just something. I watched it 5 times.
Yeah.
So eventually I noticed these things.
Right.
Something else I noticed, we see Detmer's eye is very blue, which is something that I went back. I asked other people, and then I went back. It's the left eye is very blue from episode 3 on, but I never noticed it before. And when I was talking about it, actually Brandy pointed it out that she's getting a lot more close-ups. So we're actually noticing her implant and the eye implant, ocular implant, more than we were before, which is good because we're getting to see more of her character now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I noticed her blue eye definitely in this episode. And I was thinking, I'm like, did she have those, 2 different color eyes in season 1? So I'm glad that you went back and looked. So, yeah.
Yeah, she did. And, like I said, I didn't notice it at first. All last season I missed it. But now they're really giving you close-ups, so it's focusing more on her face, which is giving us a better view of that. And that's very blue. Like, wow blue.
Yes.
So I'm amazed I even missed it last year, but I most certainly did. So what'd you think of Pike overall? We talked about him a little bit, but what'd you think of him as a character?
Oh my gosh. I cannot wait till the end of season 2 so we can do an entire episode on Anson Mount. I mean, Captain Pike. Anson Mount is so amazing, and I just love how he has captured this Captain Pike and just sort of made it his own. And there have been some clips that CBS has put out on an interview with Anson Mount and how he really accepts and honors and feels honored that he's in the captain's chair. And he feels the gravity of what this means to the fandom. And so I love Anson Mount for accepting this role and accepting this amazing opportunity to play Pike and what that means to us. So Captain Pike, I'm again glad that we get to see he understands what Lorca and how that would be detrimental to a crew. And so he's on top of it. He's like, I am not Lorca and we are going to do this together. And, he's learning the crew. I love the roll call, as I said. It's just, he is doing so great as what we think, well, in my mind, what I think a captain should be, especially coming in after having such a terrible captain before. I think he's doing it by the book, but with his personality. And so I love it.
Yeah, I really enjoy him as Captain Pike. For one, I do like that we get more Captain Pike. We get to see a story of a captain that has lived in Star Trek lore for a long time. And now we're going to actually see stories about that captain. I mean, I don't know how deep they'll go, much farther into, season 3, 4, whatever, but we're going to see at least a season worth of this captain and get to know him. Another thing is, I do like his wittiness. I like that he was talking smack back to his science officer because his science officer was talking out of turn. Another thing to do, when that whole scene with the pinky happened and his, record ends up on the main viewer, which wasn't supposed to, and he tells him to leave it up there, and he walks over and goes, "Oh, that's my F in astrophysicist or astrobiology, whatever it was." And
astrophysics,
astrophysics, right? And he's basically saying, "Look, I'm just human. I'm just a regular guy that's worked really hard, and here I've gotten, I'm just the captain. I'm not gonna be the last guy you had. I'm not going to try and screw you." Another scene I really liked from him was when he was actually getting upset and Burnham told him not to do something. And he's like, "I don't mind dissenting views, but they better come with solutions." And that, I'll tell you what, from a guy who runs work, now obviously as in construction, it's not life or death like he's talking about, but you can argue with me if I'm running work. You can tell me other ways, but you better have another way of doing it. Just don't tell me my way isn't working. You have to have an answer. Otherwise, you're doing it my way.
Yeah.
And once she provided him with another answer, he took it. So he was willing to take others' advice and take it into account and do it their way. But he wasn't going to just accept, "No, your way sucks."
Yeah.
Which I think a true captain is.
Okay, so I have a question about sort of the history with his experience on the Enterprise and his explanation that they were away on a 5-year mission. So if I get it right, they sent the Enterprise off on this 5-year mission, and they were far away from the war. Now, when he comes back, he's saying something like the being away from the war took a toll on him and took a toll on Spike. Can you explain to me, what is this toll? Is it because they weren't involved or that they were pushed aside?
I kind of take it as survivor's guilt.
Oh, okay.
Like, we weren't here to help. And so it's not explicitly said, but that's how I take it, that it's like survivor's guilt. Okay, I lived, but these people died, and I wasn't able to do anything to help this, and Starfleet wouldn't even let me come back and do anything to help this.
Okay, because I didn't quite understand that. But yeah, I can see that, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little, like, you're telling someone who's in the middle of a war, who probably has PTSD, that you're upset you weren't in a war.
Right, yeah, that's sort of how I was looking at it, yeah.
It's kind of insensitive, but...
Yeah, it was made a little more clear when, at the very end, he was like, Spock likes to ask interesting questions, and, you know, what good is saving the Federation if there isn't a Federation to come back to? I'm paraphrasing, of course.
What good is it to be the last line of defense if there's nothing to defend? And then he says, Spock asks interesting questions where logic is the beginning, not the end.
Yeah, I love that, too.
That was a good line.
Yep.
That was a very good line. That logic is the start of the question, not the answer to the question. Or, I'm paraphrasing a bit, but that gets the gist across. And I found it very interesting when he said that. I really enjoyed all the uses of Burnham's monologues in this episode. I think they did a really good job in the beginning and the end.
Okay.
Of using that, like when she was talking and she was setting up. I'm getting way ahead of myself now because we got to the end, but. Because she wants to go over to the Enterprise and see his room and that whole thing. I felt like if you go back and listen to the archives, you'll hear that I did not like her last one from the end of the last of season 1 because she talks about how no one gets second chances, and here she is getting a second chance. But I felt they did a much better job this time around of explaining what's actually happening on screen to what we can relate to her saying. And, like I said, we'll get into it a little bit more at the end of the episode. I really enjoyed that scene where she does what Spock does in the beginning of the episode.
Mm-hmm.
So, I also found it interesting, when we see young Spock for the first time, he really wants nothing to do with her.
Yeah. I don't know how I felt about that, because you would think that, and the way that Sarek spoke to him, like, I expect you to be friends. And so there is this clear expectation of that you will be friends, that you will behave. Like, in my mind, I'm thinking, Sarek is going to say, and then you are going to do. It just sort of seems like that's how Vulcan households are run. And so when Spock refuses to shake her hand, I thought, ooh, Sarek did not want that to happen that way, I don't think.
Nope. No, he didn't. Well, first he sends a fake dragon at her to scare her, and then he refuses to shake her hand.
You think so?
I think that dragon was meant to scare her. It shows her being scared, so I do believe that was on purpose.
Because that's how he was working out his nightmares, was through art therapy.
Yeah, I know. But we didn't know that part. We didn't know that was a therapy part until much later in the episode.
Oh.
But anyway, so in fact, till the last moment of the episode. But either way, I think he just wanted nothing to do with her. And while maybe Vulcan households are, you listen and I say and you do, I don't care what race you are, that kids just aren't that equipped to do that. It's just not the case. They're children. And that you want to strangle them once in a while. So that was one of those moments.
Yeah, and I don't know, for some reason, I had thought Burnham was younger, but she's clearly older than Spock coming into the household.
Yeah, no, I noticed a few people say that, but that may not necessarily be true. He may look younger, but they age differently.
Yeah.
So even if they did once tell us that she was younger, they could easily explain that away with he was 2 years older, but he looks 3 years younger.
Mm-hmm.
Because they live like 200 something years. So
exactly.
But yeah, I didn't really pay attention to that. She did look older. I didn't think that she was supposed to be younger. So I didn't look at that.
So what do you think, like, because we know that there's, contention between her and Spock. And so as Burnham's talking to Sarek, there obviously had to have been a time when they were close and that when, that Spock was learning empathy from her because, she asked Sarek, what did you want Spock to learn from me? Empathy. And she's like, well, maybe he did for a time. But I almost sensed a little jealousy when Spock was watching Burnham getting read to that storybook, Alice in Wonderland. And like he was peering over the balcony and it just seemed like, I wonder if Spock felt a little jealous that here is this human and mom is a human, so they've automatically connected on that aspect. I don't know. What did you think, or am I reading too much into it?
No, I think you're right on track. I think he was jealous. I think that's perfectly normal. It's a normal reaction. I have 2 children. And I can tell you right now, if you spend time with one, the other one gets jealous at times. It's just the way it happens. I can give you for instance, me and my son usually go to wrestling shows, right? Independent little wrestling shows in the neighborhood. And the last time we took, my wife and my daughter came along, and my son was miserable the whole show because he felt me and daddy time was infringed on.
Yeah.
Now me and my daughter can do a lot of things together, but to him, that was our thing.
It was the sacred time.
Right. So this just happened. So couple that with the fact that she's not biologically related and that she is human to a human mother, fully human, I could see Spock getting very jealous. We've learned over the years that it's not that they don't have emotions, that their emotions run wild and they control them. So being jealous is definitely something I could see being the exact cause of that whole scene. But I think, so as we were watching this episode, I like that you bring it up because when Burnham and Sarek are talking, it sounds like Spock's the problem, right? Like Spock's the reason why they don't get along. And by the end, we find out that that's not true, that it was Burnham.
Right.
Who did something to break up the relationship. And I found that to be an interesting little swerve there, that it wasn't Spock that didn't want to talk to him or her. It was she did something to make Spock and Michael not talk.
That makes me wonder because with the rift between Sarek and Spock, like it seemed to be Sarek's fault as well, wouldn't you say? With
I would.
The whole academy and thing like that.
Well, yes, but it's interesting because they kind of, in this show, they kind of explain that off as to why Sarek is so upset at Spock for not going to for going to Starfleet. And, it's interesting because it all boils down to he had to pick Burnham or Spock, and he picked Spock, and then Spock chose to not go. So Sarek regretted not picking Burnham, but you can't know that ahead of time.
Right.
So it's such a tangled mess of emotions for a group that doesn't want to show emotions.
Yeah.
So it makes it harder when basically you're the family that doesn't talk. You just don't want to talk about your emotions because you don't have any. But that's not true.
Well, and I do because at the end, before Sarek beams away, he offers to Burnham, listen, I can tell that something is weighing on you, and I will be here, and I will make myself available to you so that you can, tell me what it is. And so I like seeing, especially in this episode, how these two are sort of rebuilding their relationship. And I really, really like seeing that.
Yeah. And I also like the fact that she says, yeah, well, and basically she says, if I ever feel like telling you, I'll call you. She's still not ready to open up with that information. But I did enjoy the scene as well. And if we're going to talk on very emotional moments, we can't pass the Tilly and Stamets moments, which start off with just Stamets seeing Culber on his little viewer and getting, tickets for the opera and talking about how I know you don't like operas, but I love when you do things just for me. And then she kind of breaks in, and that's when he tells her he's leaving the ship. See, now that's a Tilly scene.
Yeah.
I don't like.
Well,
I mean, that was a perfect Tilly and Stamets scene too, because even in that scene, he tells her basically to shut up, and he kind of does it in a bit of a funny way and breaks it up a little bit. But he makes her repeat it. But that scene is what Tilly and Stamets should be. That's the kind of quirkiness from Tilly I like, not what happened on the bridge with the Morse code thing. If that makes sense.
Well, and Stamets was so spot on when it's like, Tilly, you are effervescent, yeah, and that you do everything out of love, and that's why you'll make a good captain. Like, that was so beautiful, and that he recognizes that in Tilly, and that's the kind of relationship that they share, and it's like he's willing to share with her, yeah, I'm leaving, which I did not see at all. And then his justification is like, I see Hugh everywhere, and it just broke my heart. And I'm glad that they are addressing these feelings of loss, because too many times in TV and in Star Trek, like, things just get washed over and they don't really sit with the character. And so we get to see Stamets really struggle over his loss of his love, Hugh. Right. And that's a major, going forward, that has to be a major part of his character, right? If you just wash over this, then you might as well just take the character off the show and not care. Right. But I found it interesting that he points out he's going to go work for the Vulcan Science Academy. Shouldn't that be a bigger deal that a human is going to work for the Vulcan Science Academy than it's kind of just a throwaway sentence? Well, I think it's pretty amazing. I know, but we don't really talk about it again. Like, it's just like, he's like, I got a job offer and I'm leaving for the Vulcan Science Academy, only the hardest job to ever get in the universe. Like, that should be more of a, like, she doesn't even react to that part of the sentence. Well, because I think she's just so blown away that he's going to leave everything that he's created. Like, this is his baby and he's willing to walk away. Like, I think that's hitting her more than the gravitas of joining the Vulcan Academy, as a professor. I guess I haven't even really heard people comment about it though either. Like, I don't know. It just seems to get that line gets lost in that scene and I understand why. I get the rest of that scene is so much more emotionally powerful, but that's like a big deal, I think. I don't... Have we established that humans have ever taught at the Vulcan Science Academy before this? He could be the first one ever. Great question. And we're just kind of like... he's going. Like, it's weird. Like, I don't know. Well, it was discussed here, and it is very important, and we are in awe of Paul Stamets for making this first in a lifetime opportunity here at Vulcan Science Academy. Exactly. See, The Edge, where we give medals to people who deserve them. Yes. So, we did it for the original Ash Tyler, too. Okay, but moving forward, and then it's great when he comes and catches her kind of setting up to catch this rock. Yes. He's like, you don't invite me to the party? Well, of course you're invited to the party. You're always invited to the party. Yeah. And... So I like that scene as well, because he kind of just walks in and gives the one person what they need. So he was already thinking of what they were going to need to pull this off, and and that's the scene with the yay and math, or however she puts it. This is the power of math, people. That's it. Yes, that Trust one, and then they high five. It's been ingrained. Yes. So. I totally loved that contraption that captured the asteroid. And I don't know if it's because I watched Nemesis recently for an episode on Earl Grey, but when Dinatra puts her little purse down to kill all the Romulan Senate, and her purse opens up like that. Do you know what I'm talking about? Yep, I know. That is totally, I was like, they ripped that off from Nemesis. They did. If you watch that scene, and I've seen it 5 times now, when they say clear and then they hit it and it opens like really fast, I thought it was going to damn near kill those 2 people. Like, the 2 people running away, I thought couldn't get out of the way fast enough. It's like, clear! Oh man, they're dead! It was very fast. I really enjoyed it. I found it funny too, that
part of it. I mean, I know that wasn't meant to be comic relief, but it was funny to me that it just opened up so quickly. And then when they catch it, they're like, "Oh, shuttle bay needs a little TLC, but otherwise we caught it."
Yeah.
Was pretty cool,
right? Yeah.
See, but those are the funny lines from Tilly I like.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the Tilly funny lines I like, and I feel like again they're just trying to string too many of them together. If they do 1 or 2, it's fine. When they do 10 or 11, it's too much.
Mm-hmm. So one thing talking about that, I just sort of want to highlight the ship as a character because we're now getting to see bumps and bruises on the Discovery. And again, it's because of the exploration, not because they're in war. Like when they're going through the asteroid and, Pike's like, where? Oh, no. And they were going down and they're like, well, we can't beam them up and have shields at the same time. And then that asteroid comes and just sort of nicks the dish section of that. And then in the when they caught the asteroid, it's like, yes, cargo bay is going to need some little help. It's like, oh, the ship is getting these bumps and bruises from exploring. And I like that. It's giving character to the ship. And we've got to repair because we had such a fun mission, in that asteroid belt. Red thing, not red thing.
I agree. It was one of the things they did well in Enterprise, and one of the reasons I liked the Enterprise show so much is they gave it little scratches and dings, like you're saying, and that really adds to the feel of this is my ship. This is the ship that I know and I care about. Like there was a scene in Enterprise once where they pulled into a station that was going to fix things. He's like, "Oh, it even fixed the scratch we had on the hull on the starboard side." He's like, "Didn't I tell you to fix that a month ago? I didn't get around to it yet." Like those kind of things is what they're adding in now to Discovery. That, like you said, it gives you a better connection to the ship itself.
Yeah, exactly.
It makes the ship more believable as a character, not just a hunk of metal floating around space.
Yeah. And so then I was thinking, I'm like, okay, listen, if you can't operate transporter beams and have shields, like that's got to be a huge major design flaw because we see it all the time in TNG as a story plot and, in Deep Space Nine, with the Klingons and, well, we can't fire when we're cloaked. I mean, why not? I don't know. It just was something I thought about and I thought, whoever designed that, it was very poorly because you need to have your shields up all the time or you need to have your deflector ray or your deflector shields no matter what.
Right.
You're in space.
So the only reason why you can't cloak and fire at once is because if they wrote that into the story, we'd never beat the Klingons.
Exactly.
And this was just to add a little, I don't understand. I think it's well established that you can't transport with shields though, isn't it?
So it's got to be doing something with the beams and the particles trying to go through, Yeah,
because in
scattering.
TNG, if I'm not mistaken, there were a few times where they had to get people to take their shields down.
Yeah.
That's
what I'm saying.
They try and beam someone off. They'd be like, "Oh, their shields are up already. We're screwed."
Yeah.
So it's well established.
It is.
It's kind of crappy technology.
Yeah.
Figure it out, guys. You're getting radio waves through.
Right? Yeah.
It's bad technology, but it's well established. So
yes, it is.
So in the mission where the jerk dies and Burnham saves the captain, I found that to be an amazing scene because they were very confident and not confident at all at the same time. Burnham's like, "I told you, Discovery would never let a fellow Starfleet officer down, and we got you. Discovery's got you, right, ladies?" And you could tell in her face she was nervous, and they kind of looked at each other like, "Oh, I'm not sure." Yeah, sure. If it fails, we'll never have to tell you because you'll be dead. So sure, go ahead.
That was great. Yeah, that worked really well. Again, that lighter and humor, that worked in the
more
episode
human
for sure.
It's more human. It's one thing to be ultra confident, but you're about to try something no one's ever tried before. Someone is going to control my pack from a ship while I'm out in the middle of nowhere trying to catch another guy who someone else is controlling his pack.
Yeah.
Because his pack doesn't work, or his ejection, because his pack doesn't work, and then hopefully not hit an asteroid.
Yeah.
Nobody could be that confident that this would work.
I know.
So, but they're going to try it anyway, and So the look that Detmer gives on Weshnikon, like when she looks over, she's like, "Oh," was phenomenal because it wasn't just confusion; it was like confusion and fear all in one. Like it was the perfect facial expression for that. And I don't know. So today I also watched one of the Star Trek the animated series episodes where all the men are under a trance, so the women takes over the ship, and
I love that one.
Okay, so I watched that episode, so I found it really interesting that I watched that episode, and then you have Burnham talking to the ladies, not just saying, "Hey, do we have this?" She's actually talking specifically to two women to figure this whole plan out, and I thought that was really cool.
We've got this right, ladies. Yeah,
right. Look, it's really not that important of a little word that's just added in there, but because I happened to watch an episode from the 70s that pointed out that women could control a ship and do as good if not better job than men, it resonated to me for that reason. If you go to my Twitter, you'll see that I actually pointed out that Roddenberry should have done that more because he originally wanted a woman to be the first officer and the networks put it next to it, and this was kind of his way around that. So I wish we would have seen more of that, but hindsight being 2020.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was interesting when they were getting into those little pods, I guess you would call them, and they were being ejected out from the ship. And you saw Burnham smile just a little bit. It totally reminded me way back, season 1, episode 1, Battle of the Binary Stars, or the Vulcan Hello, when she goes out into the spacesuit to try and figure out what that ship is. And she's flying through in her spacesuit and she's got this smile on, and you just know that Burnham loves adventure. And I saw it again in this episode with just that tiniest little bit of smile as she was, being ejected out into the asteroid. It was cool. Yeah.
I found that I like that part too, that you could see this is what she really enjoys. She's really good at the science. She's really good at sitting behind a computer panel and doing her job. But what she really enjoys is being out there and adventuring on something. Another part of this is when all this starts going off, and I hate them. I really hate threat ganglia, but Saru's threat ganglia comes out.
Oh, yes. I'm so glad you thought about that, because when I saw that and Saru was like looking over, really, did you expect anything less?
No,
I was
really,
like, haha, Patrick, they finally made it a joke exactly as we know it is.
So good. I'm fine. I'm happy now. Because they finally, exactly. He looked, what are you, surprised? Like, thank you. That you used this thing for what it was meant for. Nothing other than a joke. And it was great. The way he said it to the guy, the way the guy kind of just looked at him like, all right.
Yeah. It was so good. And I instantly thought of you when
It is my hot button.
It is. So now no longer, because now it is the joke that we knew it was.
Good. And we're fine. We're happy.
Yep.
We're all happy.
But I don't think that I noticed in season 1, because his threat ganglia was out so much, like the little ganglia, it moved individually. And I thought that was so interesting. And like the details that these people went to make this episode so good that nothing was left undone. Even his little threat ganglia was moving. I just found that very interesting.
Individual appendages. I did notice that in season 1. And I thought to myself, why are you putting so much effort into this useless thing?
Oh. Okay, so it wasn't.
But it is. I mean, for view, it's. I don't know if they did it every time, but they definitely did it a few times. It is amazing how much effort they put in. But maybe it's just me. Doesn't it make him look like an old man to you? Like, to me, that little hair, it looks like an old guy with a bald head and just the hair here.
Like how Patrick Stewart was at the beginning in season 1.
Yes, exactly. Like, that's just what I think of when I see that out. And then it goes back in and he's like, oh, look, he lost 20 years. He's younger.
Yeah. That's funny.
I don't know. It's just weird. But I did enjoy that.
What did you think about them finding the ship on the asteroid? And Tig Notaro is the actor who plays that engineer down, and keeping her crewman alive was so fascinating. And it seemed like walking into, I mean, the closest thing I could think of is like the Borg when they were, transforming people into Borgs, because there was just every contraption possible. I saw that on the second rewatch, and I was trying to figure out, what is this? What is this? And she just was engineering the heck out of it. And she was so funny, like flippant. She was very flippant. And she was like, well, I'm an engineer and the body's, just another system and I can read. And I loved that. I'm like, yeah, I can read.
Yeah, so I love that scene. Like, she's working on the guy's head, and she engineered the kids, she calls them. And although one part of that scene, so when they were walking through the tubes to get in, that reminded me so much of E.T. for some reason. It just had this E.T. kind of vibe.
Yes.
When they had E.T. captured. And then she's like, oh, take off they're like, can we breathe here? She's like, yeah. So lose the helmets and keep on walking. It seemed a little weird comment. And then she's like, stop, look down. Like, you just yelled at me to run. What are you doing? You think she would have warned them of the trap before they were at it, but whatever. It made for a good looking scene, I guess.
Yeah.
I loved her as a character, though. Like, she's kind of a smart aleck, which I like. She's like, what would you have done when they asked if she stayed behind? And she's like, to hindsight being 2020, it was a stupid move, but I still stayed. And she didn't know the war was over, which is interesting.
Yeah.
And she's like, oh, well, none of you are speaking Klingon, so I guess we won. And so I really enjoyed her part of the scene, but I enjoyed the whole scene.
Yeah.
Very much.
Yeah, and with Burnham being left down, that not being transported, and then her action scene of running and getting, blown up and stuff, that, again, another great action scene that had nothing to do with war. And I really enjoyed it. It was happy. It was a good time.
But then we see her believe she's seeing the Red Angel.
Yes.
Which was cool, because it ended up not being at all. But,
yeah, the foreshadowing.
Right. You see the whole outline of the Red Angel. We've seen it already, that outline, but now we see it coming towards her. And, and it starts off gradual, where you just see kind of points around the character, and then you see the whole outline, and then you see, oh, no, it's a person. But,
yeah,
just that buildup was really, really well done, I think. And, for it not to be the Red Angel, if they would have thrown that at us now, that's way too early.
Way too early, yeah.
So, but I guess that really brings us back to her wanting to go to the Enterprise. And the importance for her, this is where she finally finds out that Spock's not on the Enterprise. When he met her first, he didn't tell her that Spock wasn't there. Pike just said he didn't come out, keep your expectations low, that way you can't be disappointed.
Right.
Which is a really odd line for a captain. Captains should want your expectations high. But it turns out it's because Spock's not there. So what did you think about that when you found out that Spock was gone?
Yeah, I guess I just don't know too much of the history of Captain Pike or his mission. And so I didn't know really much anything. So whatever he said, I was just going to take. And, because I didn't know that Spock had a leave of absence, I guess we're calling this.
Yeah, he uses it as a leave of absence. I don't think it's ever mentioned in any other iteration of Star Trek anyway. So I don't think, even if you watched all of TOS right before this, you wouldn't have known. But
it was interesting because it seemed like the timing of it had relevance to her, because she was very specific in asking Pike, like, well, when did this start happening? When did you see a change in Spock? And so I'm wondering if there's a connection, that maybe something that Michael did recently that made Spock, I don't know what the connection is. I don't know.
Well, that's kind of what I'm getting at. Like, do you think that the reason why she was asking that is because whatever broke them apart happened recently, or that's part of the play on this, or is it just he can't handle that he wasn't here for the war, that he couldn't do anything to stop the Klingons or help with the Klingons? And on top of that, all right, fast forwarding a little, we see that she listens to his recording, and then it's encoded in his recording, and that's how she knows to pull it out, which maybe no one else would have really known that that's what he meant by encoded. So she pulls it out, and it's those 7 red stars that are shown. Right. So she believes, at least, that he's the cause of those 7 red stars. You can hear that in her monologue. Oh, Spock, she says, "Oh, Spock, what have you done?" And then she talks about maybe it's too late. There were so many things I wanted to tell you, but it might be too late to do that. So at least there's a thought process, whether she believes it or not, or if it comes true or not, that you could see where she sees he's partly the cause of these red stars, but she doesn't know why.
So I didn't take it that way, but I can see your point that yeah, she sees him maybe as the cause of this. I just took it as he stumbled across it and was researching it and sort of got lost in it.
Yeah, I mean, that's possible too. I can see it being just that way, and it would be fine too. Something about the way she said, "What have you done?" What have you done?
Yeah, interesting. Yeah.
I guess she could have just meant, like, "Why did you leave and go check this out?" But it just, it sounded more ominous to me. And it could be me reading into it too much because I listened to it 5 times.
Yeah, right.
But I did find it very interesting that she did use, so that's the Chekhov's dragon thing, we see him doing this art in the beginning, and then all of a sudden at the end, it's the very last scene to figure out what he was talking about in his last transmission. A piece of art we've never really seen before, So do you have any final thoughts on this episode of Star Trek?
Well, great season 2 opener. I am so happy for all the things that we talked about, like that it is this exploration that we are getting to see much more of the crew. I mean, their dialogue and the looks in between, and we're getting close-ups, like you were saying with Detmer, and we are getting to see some action and some discovery and going out there and boldly going. And we have a fabulous captain that is taking the helm, and it's very cinematic. The pacing is spot on. I wasn't bored. I wasn't, wishing it was done. It had a very good pace to it. We are learning a little bit more of each of the characters. I do miss my Klingon friends, Laurel and Voke and Tyler, and I'm sure we'll see them. But for a season 2 opener, I think it just was spot on. Very well done. What about you?
So I kind of mirror yours. I loved the episode. I thought it was a great opening to a season. I think it was a perfect opening to this season. I remember at the end of season 2, people had predicted that Pike was going to become the new captain, and I was very much against the idea of it. I wanted to see a new captain, something new, someone we have not seen before. But in reality, yes, we know about Pike. We've heard about him in TOS, and if you watch The Cage, but that's all you know. So this really is kind of a new captain, and they wrote him so well that it doesn't bother me that I was wrong, that their predictions were correct and I was wrong, because at the end of this, it turns out that he's going to be the captain of the Discovery, even though he's saying he's going to kind of share the captaincy with Saru. That doesn't really work that way. Oh, one thing we didn't talk about, when he did go around the horn and get everyone's name, everyone had 2 names, like Michael Burnham or whatever. Everyone had whatever first and last name. And when he got to Saru, he's like, Saru. Just Saru.
Just Saru.
Like, I really enjoyed that little quip from Saru right there. But with my final thoughts, I'm looking forward to learning more about Captain Pike and what Captain Pike does for Starfleet and why he's going to be more important after this than he even was before Discovery came out. And I like you said too, I do miss the Klingons a bunch, but we can't have a show just about Klingons. That's not what this show. We could, but it would have to be a Klingon show. It wouldn't be Discovery. And so I'm looking forward to where we go and the exploration of it all. And it seems like we're going to go back into somewhat of a war phase with this Red Angel at some point down the line. That it's going to be some kind of, it might not be all out fighting like a regular war, but there's going to be heavy conflict.
Some conflict.
Yeah. But I'm looking forward to getting there. I'm looking forward to how they're going to explain out the story that gets us to that point.
Mm-hmm.
So,
absolutely. Yeah.
It's been fun talking about Brother today, but this isn't the only thing we've been discussing on the network. So here's a quick look at some of the other things you may have missed elsewhere on Trek FM.
Previously on Trek.fm, Meta Treks.
Wow, I had no idea that was possible. It's this ongoing link that exists between Michael Burnham and Sarek because of this mind meld that he had with her when she was a child.
Mike, I'm going to give you a Radio Shack joke because I know you and I both have Radio Shack experience. If this if this episode happened in the 1990s, they would have had prepaid long-distance mind meld cards.
To the journey!
But I do have a question. Why was Neelix focusing on classic American cuisine as a marketable job skill in going back to the Alpha Quadrant? Why classic American cuisine? Why not Chinese, Japanese, or Vulcan? Come on.
I think that the culinary tastes will continue to degrade for the next 3 or 4 centuries, and by the 24th century, it'll only be classic American that's left. You know, all other cuisine will have gone by the wayside.
So pot roast, pot pie, apple pie.
Yeah, every restaurant is Taco Bell, essentially. Yeah, it's the Demolition Man problem.
That's disgusting.
Literary Treks.
I think we could not do this novel without inviting a special guest, Amy Nelson. Amy, how are you doing?
Hi. I am so excited. Imzadi, Riker, Troy. It is the best. I am so grateful, honored, pleased that you even thought of me for coming on Literary Trek. So thank you so, so much.
Yeah, we're like, do you think there's anybody on the network that would like to talk about Deanna Troi?
I think I have corner on the market on that one.
Standard Orbit.
Vulcans are not incapable of showing emotion, but apparently they are incapable of lying. Quote unquote.
That's their reputation. I mean, who told you? Vulcans tell you that. Of course they would. I mean, that's their reputation, you know.
And that's what else is happening on Trek.fm.
Check out all of these shows and join the conversation about your favorite corner of the Star Trek universe and beyond. You'll find us wherever you get your podcasts. If you're an Apple user, be sure to hit the subscribe button in Apple Podcasts on iPhone, iPad, or Apple TV, or the desktop iTunes app to get the latest episodes as soon as they are published. And please leave us a star rating and written review.
If you're not an Apple user, we've got you covered as well. You can find our shows on Google Play Music, Stitcher, TuneIn, Spreaker, SoundCloud, YouTube, Windows Phone, and most third-party apps, and you can stream and download the MP3 file from our website or grab the RSS link.
We'd love to hear your thoughts on today's show, and there are many ways for you to do that. The best place to join in the larger conversation is the Babel Conference, our listeners group on Facebook. Just type Babel, Babel, into the search field on Facebook, and it should come right up. If you'd like to send us an email, you can use the form on our website at trek.fm/contact. Choose to send to a show and select the edge. That will come right to me. You can also find the network on Twitter at TrekFM and on Facebook at facebook.com/TrekFM. So, Patrick, where can people find you when you're not drawing out your nightmares?
Well, when I'm not drawing out my nightmares, I'm probably somewhere on Twitterverse, living in one. But you can find me there at Magic Drop 5. That's one word. There's no spaces. The 5 is a number. It's not letters. And you can also find me. I pop in on the Babel Conference from time to time, which I've been actually checking it a lot lately. I haven't been responding, but I've been reading a lot of the comments. In fact, right after the recording of this, I'm going to go check out the postcards one because I didn't want that to influence what I said here. So I didn't check them out yet. And the other place you can get me is every other week now. We're going to be going to every other week since this is ramping up to every week. But you can find me every other Friday on Warp 5 with some combination of Brandon and Brandy. So Amy, where can people reach you when you're not showing people the power of math?
Well, I'm always doing that since I teach math. You can find me here on the network where I do Earl Grey with Justin Ozer and Richard Marquez. But that's about Star Trek, The Next Generation. You can find me on the Fandom Podcast Network where I do Discoville, and that is about Discovery and the Orville, which I really enjoy. You can find me on Twitter at Miss Amy Nelson, but my favorite place is on Facebook on the Babel Conference.
If you'd like to help us keep all our shows coming to you each week, you can become a patron of the network on Patreon. Visit patreon.com/TrekFM. That's patreon.com/TrekFM to get all the details. Perks include early access to episodes, exclusive content, producer credits, and more. Available through our special patrons website, Patron Zone. It requires a great deal of money to produce, host, and distribute these shows each month. We really appreciate any support you can give us and hope you'll join the team. Again, you'll find all these details at patreon.com/TrekFM.
We'd like to thank our bridge crew, our associate producers, Norman Lau, Tony Robinson, Thomas Puleo, Lisa Slack, Shoaib Mirza, Richard Rutledge, James Muldrow, Cornelia Reutner, Ryan Mallett, Chris Trabuzio, and our newest associate producer, Brian Milosh. Thank you so much for supporting Trek FM and especially The Edge.
Thank you for listening, and join us next time to see what's happening on the edge of Federation space.